The MedBricks webcast is focused on bringing distinguished Indians and others from diverse fields of science, medicine, technology, and philosophy to learn from each other and to create a new understandings and foster new ideas related to healthcare. Welcome to MedBricks webcast. It is a place to discuss about healthcare challenges and opportunities. Today, my guest is Dr. Howard Green, Harvard-educated, board-certified dermatologist from Florida. Dr. Greene was one of the youngest physicians elected to American College of Physicians. Dr. Greene published numerous scientific papers on ultraviolet radiation and skin cancer. He had several patents, and one of them is for gamified collective intelligence for online photo identification. It's a very hard one. I need to ask him what that is. He is very savvy in technology and created several apps in the field of dermatology. Pandemic exposed several weaknesses in healthcare systems around the world, including United States. One of them is interoperability. Interoperability means the ability of health information systems work together within and across organizational boundaries to advance healthcare delivery to individuals. It is a very important issue to Indian technology companies, particularly working in a healthcare space. Interoperability is not a technical issue. The forces behind are very complex, and we explore that with our guest today, with Dr. Howard Green. Yes, sir. Tell me about so I hope you liked my introduction, and I will ask you about that. The photo identification is a long word. What is that anyway, before I go into the...
Well, the apps we produced and patented were based on a method called gamified collective intelligence for online photo or image identification. And basically what we did was we created 3 integrated apps, and we had a professional side where qualified and credentialed dermatologists from all over the world, 70 countries, including and many from the Near and Far East, competed to identify images. It was based on the fact that if you put a bunch of dermatologists in a room, or any kind of professional or any kind of hobbyist, and you have them vote with a clicker, the majority will almost always be correct in identifying that photo or image.
So, I'm not that proficient in that area, but I wanted to... So actually, my curiosity was from the recent article you published in, you did in LinkedIn. That was interoperability. Actually, the forces behind them is much more complex than what people think. So you explained very eloquently that problems. Could you please run down through that process, Dr. Greene, and I love to listen to you about that.
Interoperability. Interoperability is a concept that's never come to fruition. The actual mechanics of the engineering of interoperability, involve processes like HLA or API that are standardized to aggregate information, or even blockchain could be used for interoperability. It's the dream of every physician to be able to look at aggregated population health data quickly and to determine what the best preventative diagnostics and treatments and palliative treatments are. And at the same time, as in the case of pandemics, use all that aggregated population data to quickly do logistics. And interoperability, unfortunately, at least in America, has never come to fruition because there's so many forces operating against full-fledged interoperability. And these are all commercial forces, because the benefits to physicians and patients the potential benefits are incredible. But unfortunately, in America, we have commercial interests who would be harmed by data sharing.
So in your article, you mentioned that the 4 outcomes for healthcare systems is the preventive, medical, surgical, and palliative care. Could you just expand on that?
Every industry has products. All right, every industry has products. what does ExxonMobil, what is their product? It's
Oil.
right, yeah, well, oil products. What is Goodyear Tire? What do they make? Rubber products, correct? Yeah, you take Nestle's candies, or they make candy. Well, in the industry of healthcare, there are 4 products produced. Okay, and these 4 products are outcomes, clinical outcomes at the bedside between the physician and their team and the patient. And there are only 4 products produced in healthcare, and that is preventative outcomes, preventing disease, medically diagnosing and treating diseases, surgically diagnosing and treating diseases, and palliating diseases, making people comfortable at the end. Outside of this, there are no other products produced and manufactured in healthcare. In order to assess the value, and there's a lot of talk about value-based healthcare in America and around the world, you have to assess, like any other product, like McDonald's, what do they make? Hamburgers. The quality and cost of that hamburger. Well, what are the qualities and costs of your, in order to assess the value, and there's a lot of talk about value-based healthcare in America and around the world, you have to assess, like any other product, like McDonald's, what do they make? Hamburgers. The quality and cost of that hamburger. Well, what are the qualities and costs of your preventative outcomes, your medical outcomes, your surgical outcomes, and palliative outcomes? Those values, those costs, and the quality of those outcomes are not transparent in America or many other places around the world. Can that data be aggregated and made transparent to create a capitalistic system or democratized system to increase access, decrease costs, and increase quality? Of course. But here again, you're running into problems. The data does not belong to the patients or the physicians who input it. It belongs to companies. Okay, so no one wants that data to be transparent. Epic, the largest, Epic and CERN don't want to release the data. They can sell it to companies. If you look at DataVant, DATAVANT, they have a wonderful infographic on the healthcare data bourse, how your healthcare data, how my healthcare data is bought and sold in America. It's a great infographic. Let's go to DataVant, and you'll see that there's billions and billions of dollars being made off this data. So as much as we would like to have a system which demonstrates, which transparently reveals the value or the outcomes of the costs of the healthcare so that we can go to the best doctor, improve the underperformance, and so on and so forth, this can't happen in America because the revelation of data and costs would be deleterious to a bunch of industries. Great for the patients and the physicians, but we come last.
I like that your idea of productizing the healthcare delivery system. You put into the 4 classifications. I loved it, actually, that part. And then everything has to be fall into the medical, preventive, and surgical and hospice care. That he did that. That's very, putting all the productizing the delivery system is it's very useful for a lot of.
Well, if you take it backwards from that, those are the products. The variables which contribute to the products are in every chart. There's 200 to 300 variables in almost every chart. They can all be extracted either mechanically or through Turks, through people, through sweat, and that's how you can assess the value of the healthcare, the quality of the healthcare, the cost of the healthcare, and there are companies that are doing this. Look at Optum. They're taking all that information out of patient charts and the billing data. It's the largest data cruncher in America. It belongs to United Healthcare. It's a vertically integrated insurance company. They also have pharmaceutical benefit managers. But Optum is there to optimize profit for the insurance company. They're not revealing all the information back to the doctor and patient. And why? Well, insurance is one of the industries that would be hurt with transparent revelation of outcomes and costs. They don't want to know they don't want anyone to know their outcomes in a certain region, certain hospital, certain doctors that they are contracted with is worse than their competitors in the same market. Blue Shield, Blue Cross, Blue Humana. So we're never going to see that. So they claim that they're crunching this data in order to tell the physicians how to be better doctors, but there's no evidence that the data that's been crunched since it's being programmed and engineered by a for-profit company, is making better, is resulting in improved outcomes across the bedside. The bias of having a health insurance company or any for-profit corporation create algorithms with healthcare data is always going to be built into the algorithms. There's always going to be bias. The frightening part is if you're dealing with an insurance company or Optum, the vertically integrated insurance companies, which have all these different products, they have to maintain 20 to 30% profits every year off their revenue. So they're not going to be engineering or coding products, algorithms to tell doctors what to do that are tilted towards patients' care if the patient care is expensive, because it would affect their profits deleteriously. And we'll never know because that data is never going to be transparent. It's always proprietary.
Let us talk about healthcare insurances for a while, for a minute, Dr. Green. One of them is, why do we need a healthcare insurance company at this day and age? We have a risk assessment is the only their product is. We have a computers can do really well in the risk assessment. So why do we need even insurance companies to start?
Your question is very appropriate, and you're correct. They have become obsolete in America, the insurance companies. Their purpose or their function has become obsolete. Another term would be they shot themselves in the foot. By extracting so much valuable and limited resources, $300 to $400 million from the bedside to the boardrooms every year.
It is a travesty, Dr. Greene. I wanted to ask you one question about this. What kind of a laws the policymakers, the future governments can pass that and see that streamline this is what kind of what are you expecting from a law policymakers if you're advisor to them?
Well, we have a bunch of laws that are just like a healthcare put in America. They guarantee that the current process of putting these industries ahead of patient and physician well-being are happening. The data should belong to the patients and perhaps to the physicians, number one. Number two is there has to be transparency to the data, because only through transparency can you get, excuse me for a second. Only through transparency can you get true capitalistic competition to increase outcomes, improve outcomes, and decrease costs. So we'll never have improved clinical outcomes, prevention, medical, surgical, and palliative, unless we can have transparent revelation of costs and outcomes. So you need laws that free up this data so everyone can see it. And if you're not cutting the mustard, either you get better or you don't. In America, we have another factor that's inhibiting. It's called medical malpractice. Medical malpractice attorneys don't want this data in order to get this bad data revealed so that you can improve. Like when the space shuttle blows up, people get in a room and say, what went wrong? Engineers scratch their head, say, hey, we found the problem was frozen O-ring, let's fix it. In healthcare, what happens is there's no transparent quality control as in engineering. Because if it was transparent, that physician would get sued. Any physician that makes a mistake, any institution that makes a mistake gets sued. So we seal things and we create this never-ending cycle of error and lawsuit without, again, improving according to Moore's law. So that's another industry that's preventing the acceleration of capitalist competition to increase quality, because there's no transparency. So you want to change the malpractice laws. You want to change the data laws so that the data belongs to the patient and the physicians. You want to make sure that there's interoperability. I can't talk to the doctor in the office next door through my HR. We still use faxes and texts, and physicians still use that because it's the most efficient form of communication. HISP addresses to communicate with distal EHRs and disparate systems aren't published in directories. So I can't get another doctor's HISP. I have books, I have telephone books with phone numbers, but I don't have a HISP on my EHR with secure emails. You want to change the laws so that prior authorization or rationing for profit is revealed. Right now, we have codes for everything in healthcare. That's what drives data. We have codes. Physicians put in codes and they can track it numerically. We have codes for getting hit by a meteorite. We have codes for slipping on a dog turd. But we don't have codes. We don't have codes for delayed. We don't delayed, changed, or abandoned care due to rationing by the insurance companies or PBMs or costs, which is bizarre since in America tens of thousands of hours are wasted a day with physicians trying to override the rationing of the health insurance companies and the PBMs or high costs for their patients. So you'd want those codes to be manufactured. Manufacturing those codes would bring down the whole house of cards because then it would be evident what is going on. The obfuscation of healthcare, the rationing of healthcare would be quantified, and that's the last thing they want. What else do you want? You want either to utilize the insurance companies by limiting their profitability, like the Bismarck system used in a bunch of companies around the world, Germany, or you want a single payer where you could, again, prevent the removal of valuable and limited healthcare resources into the boardrooms and keep it at the bedside. And you can create, once the data has been revealed, you can create systems like Amazon, where people can shop. They can say, hey, this doctor is great with these outcomes. I'm going to go to him or her. But right now, you can get a review of a product on Amazon. You can't get a review. You can get a subjective review of a physician, but there's nothing quantifiable or objective regarding very little information. Total information regarding all the variables can affect an outcome on a physician. Once those variables are published through codes, which aren't available, then you can get an Amazon system going. Of course, you're going to have like I said, you're going to have restrictions in medical
malpractice. That is the goal of MedBricks.
Performance are going to have to be improved. What were
you saying? That is the goal of MedBricks, to quantify the data. That is what my goal of my platform is. But anyway, before that, I want to talk with you about that. This is a lot of Indian companies think that the interoperability is a technical issue. It's more than a technical issue. It is a political, it is a complex lobbying work and a complex all the characters involved. It is a much more complex. You explained eloquently in your article about that. It is not just a technical issue. It is beyond a technical issue. Would you explain?
Yeah, the technology for interoperability exists. Anyone that's working on that understands that. As I said in the beginning, there is some manual, Amazon Turkish type of work that's necessary in pulling these things out of the charts. But that's But APIs can be created, and we can standardize EHRs. The idea to have multiple EHR companies was to let them compete, bring down prices, and improve quality. But because physicians are forced to lease EHRs, there's no competition. So there's no quality. There's no need to serve the physician and the patient. And there's no need for interoperability. So it's not a technical issue. The coding, the APIs, the HLA, getting standardized EHRs and getting data off EHRs is not insurmountable. It's old technology. But then you have to convince Tommy Thompson not to go to Capitol Hill and lobby for Epic. You have to say that, hey, you know what? Once this becomes standardized and interoperable, your data from your hospital is going to be released. Instead, there's not going to be the clinical trials, especially retrospective one, are going to be grabbed right off this data pile. So publishers aren't going to like that at all. Drug companies aren't going to like that at all, because if there's data out there, if they have a drug that's out there, and the instant data shows maybe it's not that great, bang, done. So a lot of companies aren't going to like it. The hospitals aren't going to like it because they're going to have to compete based on quality. The pharmaceutical benefit managers aren't going to like it because the drugs will be rated according to efficacy and cost. And the worst is the insurance companies. Insurance companies make their profits now by restricting care. They restrict care physically by limiting the number of doctors, limiting the number of hospitals you can see, and they restrict care financially by making it expensive for you to seek care, access care. And once those companies can be compared based on outcomes, what if Humana has better outcomes for open heart surgery in Palm Beach Gardens than United? for whatever reasons. You can break it down by color, which is going to reinforce the racial inequities in America. So there's a lot of political and corporate reasons not to have interoperability, and that's why we don't have it in America. But again, can you imagine in this pandemic if that information was free-flowing, and instead of waiting 6 months for two variables to be analyzed, we could have gotten that in a week with statistical significance. I mean, it would have made a world of difference. And like I said, and the sad part is that the government, to the tune of $40 billion, has subsidized this industry, not to mention forcing physicians to rent these.
That was surprise for me.
Subsidizing in America. Huh? Excuse me?
The subsidies you talked about, that was surprise to me. I was surprised that these are profit companies are getting subsidies from the federal government. It is kind of
there's direct and indirect subsidies. There's direct cash to these companies, and there's there's quid pro quo. These companies give a lot of money to the politicians directly and indirectly, so they get that in return. And there's also indirect subsidies, forcing physicians to rent. If everyone in America was forced to rent a Ford SUV, tell me about the quality of the Ford SUVs. And we're forced to rent this EHR software. Right? There's no capitalistic competition.
Yeah, there's no capitalism.
And not that, but think about this. No EHR company will reveal its back-end workflow. So we don't know how many clicks physicians, how many hours physicians per company, because they don't want to compete capitalistically based on workflow. So we're subsidizing them the $40 billion, and they're not even competing. When you buy a car, there's a sheet on a car, on a window, that tells you everything about the car, the efficiency, the gas mileage, the power, whatever is on it. You buy there's no standardized window sticker on an EHR. You have no idea what the back end on this is. You have no idea if they're selling your data, how much they're making off your data, how many clicks are involved, what the average physician's time is on these things, how much after hours work are they spending on your keyboard or on your tablet. So again, there's no true capitalistic competition here. And, only through opening up the back-end data from these companies, we force them to compete. And as soon as that's brought up in Congress, the money is going to pile in, the lobbyists will move in, they'll bribe the people. And, they can also say, they can go to the legislators in Wisconsin and say, we employ 600 people in your state. Don't make us compete capitalistically, because you're going to lose jobs in your state. So who gets screwed? It's not true capitalism. Right? It's socialized capitalism. Yeah. And who gets screwed? Like usual, the physician and the patient.
Everybody markets says this is a true capitalism. It's not.
No.
Their programming, my friend, we know that the language is called MUMS, is written on MUMS. Is a Vista. They copied the free open source from the Vista VA hospital system. They copied in and they developed more. And that is a free copy of the software, and they don't want to give up that same information back to other people. That is a height of hypocrisy in my view. What do you think of that?
Welcome to Health IT in America, the height of hypocrisy.
Dr. Greene, you gave a very comprehensive review. I think it is a very educational for all of us that how many forces are involved with the interoperability systems. We have, you educated me, even though I am a little familiar, but you educated me several aspects of the interoperability that I don't know. So including academia, and all other things, I was kind of surprised. But
all that stuff, all that stuff I wrote about is, on my LinkedIn site. So if
very good.
That's it. My opinions are fairly strong, but don't forget, they're based on clinical experience with a tech background.
Very good. I thank you so much. It was a very very detailed version you gave about the interoperability problems. I'm going to deviating a little bit about this. I'm from a small village in India. I came from a village, 2,000 population. There's no running water. There's no electricity. My father at that time in India came a long way now. But my father was a teacher, and he became a self-taught doctor. The reason he mentioned as a Chinese food doctors in your recent column, that intrigued me. My father learned by himself all the medical education. He treated 2,000 people. He took care of them. He was one of the most efficient doctors I've seen. It is really a delivery system done very well. In fact, I was. That is a you. It was a. What do you? Can you?
Yeah, well, in America, what they're trying to do is sort of bring Mao's, Chinese Mao's barefoot doctor policy into America. Remember, Mao invented this to be healthcare for the masses. Uber healthcare for the masses. People get a year or two of training and then be sent off into the rural areas to deliver healthcare. They weren't physicians, but they were called barefoot doctors. In America, we have nurse practitioners and physicians' assistants, and the insurance companies would like to increase their role in delivering healthcare, but it isn't to increase access, and it isn't to increase access and to decrease costs for the populace or quality for the populace. It's simply to deliver healthcare and ensure profits for these companies. They're essentially saying that we need more of these physicians, assistants, and nurse practitioners who have orders of magnitude less training than physicians. You're talking a couple hundred hours as opposed to tens of thousands of hours of training, not to mention all the academic qualifications that go into it, to replace doctors and deliver care. And this is being driven not by patients, not by physicians who oversee these, and they're looking for independent nurse practitioners, NPAs, who aren't closely monitored by physicians. It's being driven particularly for industry because it's a cheaper form of labor. And that's the American equivalent or analogy to Mao's barefoot doctors. Your father would be very proud of you where you are now in America, and I'm sure your father developed into a very well-rounded practitioner, especially with all the chronic diseases and all the responsibility he took in India.